My name is Leon, and I've been working the graveyard shift at 7-Eleven for almost 2 years now. If anyone asks why I choose the night shift instead of the day, which would be much less exhausting, I usually just brush it off with a smile. To be honest, the reason is simple. I love the quiet. I'm 31 years old, and I've lost all interest in loud small talk, bright lights, or shifts crowded with customers. I tried working the 9-to-5 office job and changed careers a few times, but the more I tried to fit in, the more out of place I felt. Eventually, I came back to the night shift. Most of the time it's just me, the shelves, and the steady hum of the air conditioner in a nearly empty store. My shift starts at 10 p.m. From about 11:30 p.m. on, the customers thin out. Occasionally, someone stops in for a pack of cigarettes or a cup of coffee to go. After 2 a.m., the store is almost completely empty. The fluorescent lights on the ceiling cast a pale, washed-out glow, making everything look a bit cold. Behind the counter, the refrigerators filled with soda and ice cream hum consistently. To me, the sound is peaceful. When the store reaches its quietest hour, I begin my most important task. I open the register, pull out all the cash collected during the shift, and start counting. It sounds simple, but it requires focus. I sort the bills by denomination, check for counterfeits, smooth out the wrinkled ones, and rubber band them into neat stacks. The next morning, the money bag is sealed and sent to the bank via the local post office. After doing this for 2 years, I know the routine by heart. Until that one night. It was a typical slow weeknight. Around 3 a.m., I was sitting behind the counter counting the cash. I was getting to the last stack of $20 bills when my finger suddenly stopped. Among the old wrinkled bills, one caught my eye. Right in the middle of the White House, printed on the back of the bill, there was a bright red lipstick mark. I actually let out a small laugh, thinking some girl was being playful or had been drunk and kissed the money. I tucked it in with the other 20s, rubber banded the stack, and put it in the bank bag like I always do. I didn't give it another thought until a few days later. I was going through the same counting process. As I flipped through the stack of 20s, I froze. There it was again, a red lipstick mark right in the center of the White House. I picked up the bill and looked closer. I had a gut feeling that this was the exact same bill from the other night. I remembered clearly putting that bill into the sealed bank bag. That bag was picked up and shipped out the next morning. According to the system, that money should have gone to the bank, been sorted, and put back into circulation somewhere else. The odds of one specific bill coming back to this exact store only a few days later were practically zero. I flipped the bill over and over, trying to find some small difference, hoping it was just a different bill that had been kissed in the same way. Still, I followed protocol. I put it in the stack, tied it up, and dropped it in the bank bag. For the rest of my shift, my eyes kept drifting toward the bag on the shelf. I felt a nagging, uncomfortable sensation in my chest. A few weeks passed. I managed to convince myself it was just a bizarre coincidence. Maybe there really were 2 different bills with the same mark. The world is a big, weird place, right? Then came the third time. That night, as I was counting, I flipped over a $20 bill and felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The red lipstick mark was there again, in the exact same spot. There was no mistaking it. That made 3 times. The first 2 times, I had sent it away exactly as I was supposed to. If it was the same bill, its return 3 times in a row defied any logical explanation. If it wasn't the same bill, it meant there were multiple bills like this out there, circulating and somehow finding their way to me. After my shift, I met up with Marcus, my best friend from college. I told him the whole story, trying not to leave out a single detail. At first, Marcus laughed, thinking I was just overthinking things. But when I emphasized that I knew the deposit process at the timing of the marks, his face got serious. Marcus asked if I remembered the serial number. I shook my head, I hadn't thought to write it down at first. He went quiet for a moment, then said the probability of one specific bill leaving a store, going through a bank, and returning to the same store multiple times was astronomically low. He thought it was more likely that someone was intentionally creating these bills and bringing them in. Marcus looked at me for a long time and lowered his voice. Did you ever consider that this isn't just a prank? What if someone isn't doing this to be funny, but because they believe they are transferring something into those bills? I asked him what he meant by transferring, and he didn't answer right away. He swirled his coffee and explained that in many cultures, people believe that objects touched by the body, especially things involving blood, hair, or even breath and kisses, can carry the intent of the person who did it. If someone believes strongly enough, they might think that they are passing on a blessing or a curse. I gave a forced laugh. I'm not a superstitious person, but the idea definitely got to me. I asked what the point would be, and Marcus just shrugged. He said there doesn't have to be a clear reason. Maybe they have a grudge against the world. Maybe they want to see how much of an influence they can have, or maybe they just want to prove they exist by leaving a trace somewhere. If this really is a curse, Marcus said, it isn't just for you or the 7-Eleven. It's for whoever happens to be holding that bill with the red kiss. That sentence made my blood run cold. That night, when I went back to work, I looked at the cash with a new sense of dread. The shift was tense, but luckily, nothing unusual happened. After that third time, I never saw a bill with a red lipstick mark again. My life and work went back to normal. To this day, no disaster has struck and no strange news has hit our town. But the haunting feeling remains. Even though nothing happened to me directly, I still get chills thinking about the image of someone sitting in the dark, kissing dirty money and sending it out into the world to be found by people like me.
My name is Daniel. When I was 26, my life revolved around trays of pasta and the loud laughter of a busy Chicago restaurant. But that was before the pandemic hit. When the long lockdowns forced restaurants to close, I fell into a hole. I sent out resumes with no replies, my bank account hit zero, and my rent was always past due. My only lifesaver back then was a gas station combined with a Circle K convenience store in the suburbs. They needed a night shift worker for their 24-hour schedule. I wasn't excited about staying up all night, but the pay was $1 more per hour than the day shift. That was enough to make me say yes without hesitating. The first month went smoothly under the guidance of Robert, the manager. He was a huge guy with a booming voice. The job wasn't too hard, making coffee, scanning items, and checking the fuel tanks. The night customers weren't bad either, mostly long-haul truckers, nurses getting off late, or the occasional drunk guy stopping by. What made me feel safest was the police officers. They often stopped in for free coffee and a chat. One cop patted my shoulder and said, "Just call if anything happens, we're always around." Everything started to change when Robert moved to the day shift because of family issues. His replacement was a guy named Ethan. Ethan was about 6 feet tall, but he was as skinny as a dry twig. He had a gothic style, wearing all black clothes and tons of accessories. But what haunted me most were his eyes. They had deep, dark circles under them, making Ethan look like a zombie, just barely clinging to life. On our first night working together, while I was trying to explain how to close out the registers, he just yawned in my face. He coldly muttered, "I get it. Just do your job." From then on, every shift felt like a burden. Ethan complained about everything: picky customers, the lights being too bright, or the coffee being too bitter. Whenever I asked for help, he would just lean against the fridge and say, "I'm busy, do it yourself." To avoid a fight, I quietly took over all the outdoor tasks, from taking out the trash to cleaning the gas pumps. I just wanted a peaceful shift without any drama. About a month in, I noticed a strange habit. Every time I went outside to work, Ethan would disappear into the bathroom. Sometimes for 15 minutes, sometimes much longer. When he came out, he looked even more exhausted than before. His eyes were glazed over, and he would nod off right at the counter. At first, I thought he had some kind of stomach or bladder problem. I felt bad for him, so I started being nicer and did all the work so he could rest. Our relationship softened a bit. Sometimes he would give me a small nod instead of a thank you. But then, one fateful night exposed the whole truth. It was a freezing night in January. I was outside measuring the fuel levels in the tanks. While I was busy writing down numbers, a car horn started honking loudly. An angry man waved at me from the window. "Hey, is anyone at the counter? I need to pay." I rushed inside. The register was empty. Ethan had disappeared again. I looked at the closed bathroom door and sighed, thinking I knew what was going on. I quickly rang up the customer and waited for Ethan. Almost 30 minutes passed and there was still no sign of him. A feeling of dread started to rise. He had never been in there that long before. I walked over and knocked lightly on the door. "Ethan, you okay in there?" The only answer was a terrifying silence. I knocked harder and shouted, "Ethan, answer me or I'm breaking the door down." Not a single sound came from inside. I stepped back and kicked the door with all my strength. After 2 direct hits, the door burst open. I gasped when I saw Ethan slumped over on the toilet. His head was tilted forward and his arms were hanging limp at his sides. His skin was gray, his lips were blue, and there was white foam at the corners of his mouth. I stood frozen for a few seconds, unable to breathe. When I finally found the courage to touch his shoulder, I shivered. His body was already as cold as ice. I ran out, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. "There's a dead body at the gas station on Lincoln Road. Please hurry." While waiting, I looked at Ethan one more time from the doorway. I was shocked to see a small syringe lying lonely by his feet. There was still a bit of clear liquid in the needle. In that moment, all the pieces from the last 3 months finally clicked together, revealing a brutal truth I never suspected. His disappearances, the dark circles, the sudden sleepiness. He wasn't sick. He was a drug addict. The police and ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. Robert showed up too. He looked at the scene and held his head in his hands. My God, I had no idea. They took Ethan's body away. Robert and I sat in total silence in the middle of the store. Outside, customers were still pulling up to buy gas and snacks. After that, Robert went back to the night shift until we hired Lily, an energetic girl with pink hair and a constant smile. Her presence made the shifts feel less gloomy. We eventually started dating, and luckily, everything went well. I eventually worked my way up to night shift manager. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of my shift, I still think about Ethan. I feel a mix of anger for being lied to and deep pity for the tragedy of an addict.
The clock on the wall said 9 p.m. I glanced out the window of the Dollar Tree. Parking lot was damn near empty. Just my car and a red one parked way out in the corner. I wrapped up the last bit of cleaning for the day and was about to clock out. Next time I looked, it was already 9:45. I muttered a little prayer under my breath. Please, nobody come in now. And of course, right on cue, ding ding, the doorbell went off. I looked up. A white guy walked in. Probably mid-40s. Shoulder-length brown hair, thick mustache. Didn't even glance at me. Just headed straight to the canned food aisle. I gave him a polite hi and went back to sweeping. Couldn't help but chuckle. Guess that's what I get for wishing too hard. Life's got a real sense of humor. The guy was moving slow, sneakers squeaking with every step. I could hear him rustling through the shelves, poking around like he was looking for something specific. I finished up, rolled the cleaning cart behind the counter, checked the register, started counting the drawer. logged today's sales in the book. As I scanned the numbers, that guy popped back into my head. I glanced at the clock, 9:55, looked around the store. He was gone, dead silent. I walked down every aisle, nothing, no one. Checked the men's restroom, gave the door a polite knock. Anyone in there? Silence. I pushed the door open. Empty. He must have left without buying anything. Guess he didn't find what he wanted. I was busy cleaning, so I didn't catch him leaving. The front door doesn't chime when someone goes out, only when they come in. Yeah, that's probably what happened. At exactly 10 p.m., I wrapped up my shift, locked the main door, shut off the lights in the customer area. Only the ones over the register and by the back exit were still on. Grabbed my bag from the staff locker. Time to head out the back door. I started thinking about tomorrow. Day off. Plan, cook something decent, and binge Netflix. The sound of glass shattering rang out from the front of the store. I jumped, let out a scream, spun around. A jar of jam had hit the floor, smashed to pieces. Thick, dark purple strawberry jam oozed everywhere. At the end of the aisle stood the man, just standing there, staring right at me. He was smiling, wide, too wide, yellow teeth. My heart was hammering in my chest. He'd been here the whole time, hiding, somewhere, and I hadn't seen him. "The store's closed, come back tomorrow," I called out, voice shaking. He didn't say a word, just grabbed a box of cereal and whipped it onto the floor. It exploded on impact, flakes flying everywhere. "You need to leave, now." I tried to sound firm. Truth was, I was scared out of my damn mind. He picked up a bottle of detergent and hurled it. The cap popped off when it hit. Blue liquid spilled out, mixing with the jam. I backed up toward the counter. My hands were shaking as I reached for the phone. He started walking toward me, still grinning, still laughing. The laugh didn't sound human anymore. I turned and bolted for the back door, fumbled with the key and dropped it. I bent down to grab the key, hands still trembling. Behind me, I could hear more crashing, stuff falling, glass shattering. I fumbled with the lock, managed to get the back door open, and bolted into the parking lot behind the store. Sprinted to my car, hit the unlock button on the remote, jumped in, slammed the door shut, locked it right away. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. Dollar Tree on Maple Street. There's a man inside. He started wrecking the place after closing. I'm on the night shift. "Police will be there in 5 minutes. Are you hurt?" "No," I said. "I'm in my car, out back in the parking lot." From where I sat, I could just make out his shadow moving through the store, thanks to the faint glow from the register lights and the back exit. More glass breaking, more thuds. 10 minutes later, the first cruiser pulled up. No siren, just those red and blue lights spinning in the dark. 2 officers stepped out, hands hovering over their guns. I jumped out of my car and ran over to them. "He's still in there, I don't know what he wants." One of the cops looked at me and gave a short nod. "You know who he is? Name?" "I don't know. He came in right before closing like a normal customer. I thought he'd left." The other officer clicked his radio. "We need backup at the Dollar Tree on Maple. Male suspect, breaking and entering. Property damage in progress." The 2 officers moved toward the back door. I stayed by my car, watching. A few minutes later, another cruiser pulled in. 3 more cops jumped out and headed straight into the store. "Out! Hands up!" Their voices boomed from inside. Then a scream. Not fear, rage, raw and feral, like some wild animal backed into a corner. There was a crash. Heavy. Footsteps pounding. Then the sound of metal slamming against metal. I stood outside, frozen, adrenaline buzzing in my veins. "Stop! We got him!" After 10 long minutes, they brought him out. His hands were cuffed behind his back. His t-shirt was ripped to shreds. But the worst part? He was still smiling. Grinning like the whole thing had been some big joke. As they walked him past me, he turned his head, locked eyes with me. In the harsh glare of the police car's headlights, his face looked off. He mumbled something as they loaded him in, too low to catch.
One of the squad cars drove off with the man inside. Two of the officers stayed behind to take my statement. They walked me back into the store so I could check the damage. It looked like a war zone. Stuff everywhere. Shelves knocked over. Broken glass scattered across the floor like glitter from hell. There was a skull drawn in strawberry jam on the floor near the register. Fear surged up and I started crying. The two officers gave me a ride home. It was midnight. 2 days later, I was back on the morning shift. The store was in full restock mode after the whole mess. That's when I got a call from the police with an update on the case. The guy's name was Gray Carter. Used to work here 2 years ago. Got into a legal fight with a customer. Ended up getting fired. Since then, he'd become mentally unstable. Had made threats to a bunch of people. I stood there staring out over the half-stocked shelves, carts, and boxes. This wasn't just some random act of vandalism. It was a symptom of something deeper. A crack in the surface. A reminder of the wounds in this town that never really healed. My name's Sarah. I'm 23, and I work the night shift at a 7-Eleven out in the suburbs of Arlington. Most of the folks who come in that late are truckers or people driving in from who knows where just to grab gas and some caffeine. That morning, it was around 6. The sky was starting to lighten up. I was at the back, counting the cash in the safe, last thing I had to do before clocking out. Then I heard the bell over the door. First customer of the day. He was tall, with a thick beard. "Morning, large coffee?" he said. "How do you take it? Sugar? Cream?" "Just black." I stopped counting and grabbed a cup, moving quick. He smelled like diesel fuel and stale sweat. I cringed just a little as I turned to pour the coffee. Through the front window, I caught sight of a big rig parked outside. Yeah, definitely a trucker. I handed him the coffee. He dropped some change on the counter but didn't leave. Just stood there, sipping, eyes drifting around the store. "You working alone?" That caught me off guard. I tried to play it cool. "Not really. My coworker's coming in soon." He gave a slow nod, eyes still locked on me. "It isn't safe for a girl working nights like this." He sipped his coffee again, still watching me. "Hey, you know how to get to Vegas? I think I'm lost." I pointed to the map we had taped up on the wall. My hands were starting to sweat, but he didn't even look at the map, just kept staring. "How old are you?" he asked. Something in me said not to answer. "You look really young. Still in college?" He stepped in closer to the counter. I could see the stains on his shirt now, and the body odor hit me harder. "Where do you live? Far from here?" My heart started pounding. I instinctively stepped back, reaching under the counter, feeling around for my phone. He smiled. That kind of smile that makes your skin crawl. "Hey now, don't be scared. I'm just making conversation." He planted both hands on the counter and leaned in. "You got a boyfriend? Someone picking you up?" I didn't say anything, just stared out the front, praying someone would pull in. It felt like being locked in a cage with something dangerous. "Why aren't you answering me?" He stepped closer, just one table between us now. "I'm just trying to get to know you." I took a shaky breath. "Sir, there are security cameras in here." I pointed up toward the ceiling, hoping that would make him back off. He glanced up, then gave a lazy smirk. I didn't do anything. He drained the last of his coffee, then chucked the cup at the trash can so hard I flinched. "Hey, you drive to work? Or someone drop you off?" Still no answer from me. I couldn't hide the fear on my face anymore. He started walking down one of the aisles, but his eyes never left mine. "You know, I like young girls." I glanced at the door. It was too far. He could easily cut me off if I ran. "Let's go get coffee somewhere else. I know a quiet little spot." The way he looked at me, the way he said it, the way he just stood there, casually blocking the exit. It felt planned. All of it. Then he started acting weird, pressing both hands to his face, grinning like a little kid. I froze. My heart was hammering in my chest. Then he started whistling, his head bobbing side to side like some drunk. "Sarah!" he called out, all giddy. I glanced down at my name tag in panic. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone under the counter. And then he started counting down. 10, 9, 8. His voice got lower with each number, slower, but creepier. And then, like fate throwing me a lifeline, I heard an engine pull up outside. My heart damn near leapt out of my chest. It was Mike the mechanic. He worked over at the plant down the road. He always stopped in for coffee before his shift. The second I saw Mike, the weight on my chest lifted. I called out, "Mike!" and shot him a "please help me" look. He caught on fast. He glanced at me, then clocked the trucker standing in the middle of the store. "Sarah," he said loud and clear. The guy turned to him, sizing him up. Mike was shorter, but built like a tank with tattoos and scars on his arms. The kind of guy you don't mess with. "You know this girl too?" he asked. "I'm a regular," Mike said calmly. "What about you?" "Just stopped in for some coffee." But he wasn't going anywhere. He just stood there, arms locked in front of him, still blocking the damn exit. Mike stepped up to the counter, right between me and him. "Same coffee as always," he said, then turned to face the guy. The whole store went dead quiet. The guy didn't move. He sneered and gave Mike a once-over like he thought he had the upper hand. Then, real slow, he reached into his pocket. Just enough so we could see the handle of a knife. My blood ran cold. Mike saw it too. His expression changed in an instant, eyes like ice. "I'd think twice before doing something stupid," Mike said. The guy raised an eyebrow. "Or what? What are you gonna do?" He stroked the knife handle like he was itching to escalate. The tension was thick enough to cut with a blade. I choked up, trembling as I watched the two men face off. Mike had his fists clenched, eyes locked and dead serious, completely dialed in. The tension hung in the air for a few more seconds. Then finally, the driver slowly pulled his hands out of his pockets and started backing away. "All right, just this once," he muttered. He turned and walked toward the door. Mike didn't move, just kept his cold stare fixed on the guy. At the door, the driver stopped. He turned back, gave me this eerie little smile. "Bye, Sarah. I'll be back." The sound of his truck engine faded into the distance, and I collapsed into the chair behind the counter, my whole body shaking like a leaf. Mike came over, his voice soft. "You okay, Sarah?" I nodded, but the tears wouldn't stop. Relief mixed with fear, spilling over. "Thank you, Mike. I don't even want to think about what could have happened if you hadn't walked in." I didn't call the cops. I just wanted that day to disappear. After that, Mike and I got a lot closer. We've been in this kind of interesting stage. He swings by the store a few times a day now, and I still work there. Only now, I keep a taser and a can of pepper spray under the counter. Hopefully, I'll never have to use them. Some nights, I wake up feeling like someone is standing outside my bedroom window, even though I live on the 12th floor, and I don't think it's an illusion, because Richard has never been found. I'm Sarah, 28 years old. 2 months ago, I moved from California to Denver to work in the cardiology department of a local hospital. In cardiology, family members are allowed to stay overnight to care for patients, so the atmosphere at night feels less lonely than other departments. The first week went smoothly. I gradually got used to the job, learned how to use the equipment, and memorized the names of my colleagues and patients. Everything was normal until I met Richard. He was the husband of Mrs. Helen, 65, who had just been admitted for a heart attack. Mrs. Helen was in room 314, a double room, but the bed next to her was empty. Richard was much younger than his wife, only about 45, tall, with slightly graying hair at his temples. The first time we met, he greeted me very politely, his voice gentle. "Thank you for taking care of Helen." In the first few days, I was truly touched to see Richard always sitting by his wife's bed. He held Mrs. Helen's hand, spoke softly, and read the newspaper to her. Not everyone is lucky enough to receive such care during illness. After about a week, I started to notice something strange. Every time I entered the room to check on Mrs. Helen's condition, Richard would turn and look at me. At first, I thought it was just a natural reaction from a family member seeing a nurse, but his gaze lingered longer than necessary. His smile started to make me feel uneasy. I tried to ignore that feeling. Maybe I was overtired and overly sensitive, but everything changed completely. That night, it was around 1 a.m. I was leaning over to check Mrs. Helen's heart monitor, focusing on jotting down the readings. Suddenly, I felt someone's breath close to my ear. "You smell so good." I jumped, turning around, the blood pressure monitor in my hand almost dropping to the floor. Richard was standing right behind me, just inches away. Richard took a step back, still smiling. "I was just complimenting your perfume." "But I don't wear perfume when I work. Hospital policy doesn't allow it." I nodded awkwardly, quickly finished my check and left the room. All the way back to my desk, I felt like 1,000 ants were crawling on my back. Richard's friendliness seemed excessive. The next morning, I found a slip of paper on my desk. It was placed right on top of the patient files I was processing. The handwriting was neat. "To my favorite nurse." Below it was a drawing of a flower, each petal detailed, carefully shaded. The artist must have spent a lot of time on this small drawing. I asked my colleagues, but no one knew who left the note. The night security guard also said he didn't see anyone unusual in the work area. For a second, I thought of Richard, but then I put the note in a drawer and decided not to investigate any further. From then on, the feeling of being watched began to haunt me. Once I went to the restroom at the end of the hallway and heard footsteps following me. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but I swear I heard a faint sigh from the dark corner near the stairs. Every time I passed room 314, I felt like eyes were watching me from inside. Many times I looked back and saw Richard's head peeking out from the doorway, but when our eyes met, he would just smile and turn away. I decided to avoid room 314. I asked Jessica to check on Mrs. Helen for me, giving the excuse that I was handling another emergency. When Jessica returned, she said, "Mr. Richard asked about you. He said you're the best nurse he's ever met." I froze, unable to respond. My next shift, around 2 a.m., the nurse call bell from room 314 started ringing. It wasn't a normal ring. It was continuous, non-stop. Jessica was busy with another patient, so I was forced to go check. When I entered the room, I saw Mrs. Helen sleeping soundly, her breathing steady. Richard sat in the chair next to her, his arm resting on the bed rail. He looked at me with a worried expression. "Could you check Helen again?" "I feel like something's not right." I approached the bed, checking thoroughly. The vital signs monitor was completely normal. "Everything about her is normal. Are you mistaken?" But instead of answering my question, Richard asked, "Are you afraid of working the night shift?" I looked at him with skeptical and uneasy eyes. Was he intentionally pressing the bell to get me to come here? "Many things can happen at night. A young girl like you, alone in an empty hospital," he said, his voice slow. Richard's face looked strange. His smile seemed to hide a hungry look. "I have to go check on another patient." I tried to act normal and quickly left. I would definitely talk to someone about getting a different nurse to care for Mrs. Helen, preferably a male nurse. The next day, I had a scheduled day off. When I returned to work, Jessica told me about a man who had come looking for me on my day off. He said he was a family member of a patient who had been discharged and wanted to thank you. When I told him you weren't here, he looked very disappointed. Jessica described the man as middle-aged, tall, with slightly graying hair. Hearing the description, I immediately guessed it was Richard. Richard disappeared that day, and the hospital could not contact him for the next few days. Helen had no relatives to take care of her. I went to the records room to check Helen Miller's information and find contact information for her other relatives. But what made me shiver was that, in the contact information section, Richard's name was not listed. The emergency contact was Helen's daughter, Jennifer, who lived in Portland. I took the phone number from the file and called Jennifer. "Richard? I don't know anyone by that name," Jennifer said. "My mom has been a widow for 15 years. She lives alone." Her voice was both confused and angry. I hung up, my hands trembling. Richard had lied to me. He had impersonated Mrs. Helen's husband for a whole week, so what was his real purpose? I called the police immediately. 2 days later, they called back. The result struck me like lightning. His name is Richard Hayes, 47 years old, and he works for the hospital's cleaning company. This job allowed him free access to medical areas and to collect personal information about staff without anyone suspecting. My legs felt like jelly. "We're actively searching for him," the police officer continued. "Would you be able to identify him if we apprehend him?" I agreed. Richard could be anywhere, still watching me from places I couldn't imagine. Jennifer immediately transferred Mrs. Helen to another hospital. The hospital apologized and reimbursed all medical expenses. Jennifer was also understanding and didn't make a big deal out of it. 2 months have passed, but Richard still hasn't been found. I've changed jobs, moved, and even changed my name. I don't know how much longer this haunting will last. When I started my job as a night nurse at a children's psychiatric hospital, I truly believed that patience and kindness would be enough to heal. But after just a few weeks, I began to realize there were things in this place that weren't anything like what was written in the training manual. And some of those glances from the children, even a quick one, sent shivers down my spine. My name is Mia. Last August, I started working as a night nurse at a specialized treatment facility, specifically for children with severe mental health issues. Most of the patients here had a history of violence or self-harm, transferred from all over New York State. I believed I could make a difference in the lives of those damaged children. In the first few days, I spent a lot of time with Alex, an 8-year-old boy with a history of bipolar disorder. He always played by himself in the corner of the room, never speaking to anyone. I'd sit next to Alex for hours, reading or simply being there to observe. One day, while tidying Alex's room, I felt something under his pillow. I pulled it out, and it was a sketchbook. Curious, I opened the first page. Immediately, my body froze. The drawings, done in black pencil, were disturbingly detailed. The first page showed a man in a white lab coat with his stomach stabbed open. The second page was a faceless child, tied up hand and foot, lying in a hole. I flipped through more pages, my hands starting to tremble. Each page depicted a different, terrifying image. When I got to the last page, my heart nearly stopped. It was a woman with her hair in a ponytail, wearing a nurse's uniform that looked just like mine. Blood streamed from her nose, her eyes wide with horror. I grabbed the sketchbook and ran straight to Ms. Brooks's office, the head nurse. When I placed the sketchbook on her desk, she frowned, flipping through a few pages indifferently. Her face didn't change expression when she saw the drawings. "Just doodles. We shouldn't overreact to kids' games." She put the sketchbook in her drawer and locked it. I tried to explain the drawings, but Ms. Brooks stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. There was nothing else I could do. A few days later, my worst fear came true. Around 1 a.m., I heard a commotion coming from Alex's room. I rushed over to check on the situation. As I got closer, I heard the sound more clearly. It sounded like labored breathing. I pushed the door open, and the sight before me stunned me. Alex was trying to strangle Ben, the boy from the next room who often had nightmares. I was even more shocked by Ben's reaction. He wasn't struggling, nor was he calling for help. He just had his eyes wide open as if he had accepted everything. I lunged forward, pulling Alex off Ben. During the struggle, Alex screamed and turned to punch me directly in the nose. Excruciating pain spread across my entire face, and blood gushed from my nose, but I couldn't let go of Alex. When I finally restrained him, he looked up at me. His eyes were empty, and then he gave a chilling smile. I hugged Ben and pressed the call button for help. 2 colleagues rushed over and sedated Alex. I tended to my injury and then remembered. What had just happened was exactly what was in Alex's last drawing. I reported the incident to the day nurse, who just shrugged. Things like that aren't rare here. That's just how it is. I requested to see the head doctor, suggesting that Alex be transferred to a more specialized facility, but he shook his head. His file is very sensitive. His family has influence in the city. But Alex's condition is... That's the expertise and responsibility of nurses like you, right? I remained silent and left. It felt like everything I had just gone through was being ignored. The next night, as I passed the medical room to get medication, I overheard the head doctor's voice through the slightly ajar door. The children's conditions have clearly worsened since the budget cuts. There's a severe staff shortage, but don't put that in the official report. I froze there. Everything began to become clear. So it was all due to the administration's indifference, how they covered up incidents, and why children with serious, potentially dangerous conditions were kept here. When I checked Alex's room, I saw him sitting on his bed as I entered. He won't be staying much longer. I felt a chill run down my spine and left the room without saying anything further. The next day, I looked into Alex's medical records. Before coming here, he had seriously injured a classmate. The incident was quietly resolved thanks to his family's influence. Over the past 3 years, 6 nurses had abruptly quit after working with Alex, and no one had explained why. I took this information to the head nurse, who looked at me with a cold stare and said I was showing signs of occupational stress and needed time off. That's when I understood. The system wasn't just indifferent, it was actively covering up the truth. They knew Alex was dangerous, but for their own benefit, they chose to remain silent. I submitted my resignation. I also wrote a detailed report about Alex and sent it to the state's Department of Health. But I never received a response. 2 weeks later, I read the news in the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Anna Davis had been attacked by a patient during her night shift and was hospitalized in critical condition. The article didn't mention the patient's name, only saying it was an unfortunate incident. But I knew it was Alex. Now I work at a small pediatric clinic in suburban Buffalo. I wonder how many more nurses have been assigned to care for Alex, and how many cases like Alex's are being concealed within the healthcare system, just for money and reputation. Perhaps the most terrifying thing isn't the sick children, but the adults who have chosen to turn a blind eye to the truth. It all started when I was 17. That's when I got my first job working the night shift at a gas station. My parents weren't thrilled about me working late, but I was determined to help them with part of my college tuition. The gas station where I worked was lonely, like an island in the endless cornfields of Ohio. At night, the dim light only lit up a small corner, and the rest was shrouded in darkness. The thing I feared most was also the last task before the end of my shift, taking out the trash. The big dumpster was in the back corner of the parking lot, where the light didn't reach. Every time I walked out there, I would imagine someone was hiding among the trash bags or in the darkness, ready to grab me. I tried to convince myself to let go of those crazy thoughts, but I couldn't. Every time I went to take out the trash, I would perform a small ritual of my own. I'd turn on my flashlight, look around carefully, and then run quickly to the dumpster, throw the bag in, and immediately go back inside. I still remember that shift. There were only 3 customers all night. At 2 a.m., I locked the cash register and turned off the lights in the store, leaving only the lights in the gas pump area on. I picked up the trash bag and walked out the back door as usual. The parking lot was empty, with only 2 trucks parked in the far corner. I was walking toward the dumpster when I suddenly heard a voice. "Hey, you!" The whisper was raspy, like someone was trying to hold their breath. I froze, my heart pounding. The trash bag fell from my hand. I turned around and looked, my eyes trying to find the source of the sound. But there was nothing but darkness. Maybe it was the wind blowing through a truck window, or maybe it was the radio from a cab. I tried to reassure myself. I bent down to pick up the trash bag, intending to continue, when I heard it again. "Excuse me, could you help me?" For a brief moment, I almost believed that someone was in trouble, but something felt wrong. Why would they whisper if they really needed help? Why wouldn't they step into the light or come into the store? With that thought, I dropped the trash bag, turned, and ran toward the back door. Just as I was about to touch the doorknob, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall, dark figure approaching. Luckily, I made it inside the store, slammed the door shut, and with trembling hands, I turned the lock and engaged the deadbolt. I ran to the front of the store, turned on the lights to check the front door lock, and then called my dad. "Dad, I need you to come pick me up. There's someone suspicious around the parking lot." My dad didn't ask any more questions. About 15 minutes later, the headlights of his car shone into the store. I ran out and jumped into the car without looking back. On the way home, I told my dad about the whispering voice. He just listened without saying anything. The next morning, the gas station manager called me. The manager's voice sounded pretty exhausted. The manager told me that I didn't have to come to work that day and said that after I had left, 3 men had broken the lock on the front door to get into the store. They searched the place, took all the money from the cash register, and cleared the shelves of all the cigarette packs. They even took cans of beer and chewing gum. The security camera recorded one of them constantly looking toward the back door, where I usually took out the trash. After hearing the phone call from the manager, I was in a daze. I'd been so close to a monster, but I had luckily escaped in the nick of time. The police came to see me that afternoon. They said this wasn't the first case. This group of criminals had attacked 2 other gas stations in the past month. What was special about the previous cases was that they took the night shift employees hostage and beat them to get the cash register passwords. There were no casualties, but the victims were all seriously injured. When I heard that, I broke down in tears. I was truly lucky to be here, in one piece, to tell the police everything. I quit my night job after that. My parents were very happy with that decision. In the years since, every time I think back to that terrifying night, I still get shivers thinking about how I had a close call with death. The vigilance and fear that I once thought were crazy had actually saved my life. My name is Emily. 4 years ago, when I was a sophomore in college, I worked the night shift at a McDonald's in Austin, Texas. I had only moved here a few months ago for a student exchange program. It was a weekend. In the first few hours, everything went as usual. There was a large crowd of customers for a weekend afternoon. Around 3 p.m., a man walked in. He was tall with short brown hair, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. "2 Big Macs," he said in a short sentence. I asked if he wanted a drink, but he shook his head. I entered the order into the computer, gave him the total, and handed him the receipt. He paid with cash, took the receipt, and stood to the side to wait for his food. I continued to serve the next customers. A few minutes later, after I had just finished a family's order, the man came back to the counter. This time, his face showed clear signs of frustration. "Hey, you charged me for 2 Big Macs, but I only ordered 1. I was stunned. I remembered very clearly that he said, 2 Big Macs. His voice was very clear. There was no ambiguity. "I remember you ordered 2 Big Macs, sir." His face suddenly turned red. "Don't put words in my mouth. I know what I said." His voice was now significantly louder. A few other customers started turning to look at us. I had never encountered such an angry customer before, so I was a bit flustered. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean that. There might have been a misunderstanding. Don't get slick with me." He slammed his hand on the counter. "I only ordered 1 Big Mac." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm and professional. "I apologize for the confusion. Can I refund you for 1 Big Mac?" "No, you should be fired. You don't deserve to work here," he yelled, his voice echoing through the restaurant. By now, every customer was looking at us. Just then, Jack, my coworker on the same shift, came over. He had almost 2 years of experience, so he was very calm. The man immediately turned his anger toward Jack, explaining how he had been overcharged. Jack listened patiently. After a few minutes of talking, the man shook his head. "Forget it. I just want my money back and to get out of here." Jack nodded and motioned for me. I refunded the money with shaking hands. He snatched the money and put it in his pocket. The man turned to leave, and Jack patted me on the shoulder, signaling that everything was okay. But then, the man suddenly turned back. He leaned over the counter, getting close to me. "When you get off work, I'll be waiting for you." His voice was now cold and calculated. He said the words very slowly, one by one, as if he wanted to make sure I understood their meaning. I froze, just looking at him with wide eyes. Jack also heard him. He moved closer, but the man had already turned around and walked out of the restaurant. I stood there for a few seconds, my heart pounding like a drum. Jack asked if I was okay, and I tried to act calm. But honestly, I didn't know how to interpret that comment. Was it a threat, or just a way to express his frustration? I wasn't too worried about the threat, as I had just started my 8-hour shift. I didn't think a man would wait that long, and I didn't think he would actually do it. I continued to work the rest of my shift. Everything went smoothly, and by the time I was off, I had completely forgotten about the incident. When my shift was over, I walked out the back door of the restaurant. The parking lot was quite dark. I walked quickly toward my car, constantly looking around. When I got close to my car, I saw a white pickup truck parked on the opposite side of the lot, about 30 yards from my car. Suddenly, the pickup truck door opened, and that man got out. Had he been waiting there for 7 hours? He started walking toward me. I ran toward my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my keys in my purse. "Emily!" He yelled my name. He ran over and managed to grab my arm. He pulled hard, trying to drag me away from the car. I was screaming and in complete panic. In the struggle, I remembered the pepper spray in my purse. I pulled it out and sprayed it wildly. He yelled, let go of my arm, and backed away. I quickly jumped into my car and locked the doors, out of breath from the struggle. He was still there, cursing and trying to wipe the pepper spray out of his eyes. Just then, Jack and the manager ran out. They must have heard my screams. When he saw the two men, the man quickly turned and ran toward his pickup truck. He started the engine and sped off. Jack ran to me, and I recounted what had just happened, my voice choked with tears. It was him. He really waited. The manager immediately called the police. Jack sat next to me, trying to comfort me while we waited. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They took my statement and a description of the man. The police said they would search for him and increase patrols in the area. They told me to report it immediately if I saw him again. 4 years have passed, and I've never seen him again. But I will never forget that terrifying night. He spent all day nurturing his anger, and the reason was all because of a Big Mac. Sometimes, the scariest thing at a convenience store in the middle of the night isn't the silence, but the certain feeling that no one sees you. Last October, I had just moved to Austin for college. Earning money to pay tuition wasn't easy, so I got the graveyard shift at the 7-Eleven on Guadalupe Street. On Halloween night that year, I was working from 10 p.m. until morning with Jake, another clerk. Jake had been with the store for almost 3 years. He's a funny, talkative guy, but that night he was unusually quiet. I figured maybe the Halloween atmosphere made everyone a little somber. Around midnight, while we were stocking shelves, the doorbell chimed. A middle-aged man walked in. He went straight to the soda section, grabbed a cola and a bag of candy. As he passed the counter, he stopped and looked around. "It's freezing in here," he said to us. "Feels like a morgue." I offered a small laugh and nodded. "Maybe the AC is broken." We called to get it fixed. Actually, the air conditioner was working fine, but I also felt a strange chill covering the whole store. I thought maybe it was just the Halloween mind game. As Jake was ringing up the man, I looked out the window and saw 2 figures standing under the streetlight. A couple, a man and a woman. The girl was wearing a red dress with long blonde hair. The guy had on a black leather jacket. They stood still, like statues, staring right into the store. There was something about them that felt familiar. Their faces, the way they stood, the way they looked inside. But I couldn't place where I'd met them. They started moving, but they didn't walk normally. Their feet seemed to slide without touching the ground. The couple moved closer to the window. The light from inside the store illuminated their faces. That's when I noticed their eyes were entirely black. No whites, no pupils. "Hey, do you see?" I turned to ask Jake. But Jake was giving the customer his change, completely unaware of the outside. Suddenly, the unbelievable happened. The couple outside started to merge. Their bodies melted and combined into one massive black mass. That black mass distorted, growing horns and sharp claws. I stood frozen in place. No way, what was happening couldn't be real. The creature lunged straight at the glass door, but instead of shattering the glass, it passed right through it, as if the door were just a curtain of fog. I wanted to scream a warning, but my throat was completely constricted. The monster rushed right toward the man standing at the counter. I clearly saw its claws tear through his chest, but the man only flinched, then looked around, confused. "Is everything all right?" Jake asked the man. He took his change, quickly pocketed it, and rushed out of the store. He glanced back once with a look of fear before leaving. The demon still stood there, right in front of Jake. It stared, but did nothing. I used all my strength to scream a warning, but Jake just stood motionless, staring straight ahead, as if he didn't see anything. Suddenly, the demon turned its head and looked at me. I felt like my soul was being sucked into its pitch-black eyes. No longer caring about anyone else, I turned and ran straight into the stockroom behind the store. I locked the door, leaned against the wall, and gasped for breath. Panicked, I looked around, desperately searching for anything to defend myself. I looked up at the small mirror hanging on the wall. That's when I saw the truth. In the mirror, my face was pale, and there was a deep wound on my neck. Blood was dry and congealed around the injury. Stunned, I slowly approached the mirror and touched the wound on my neck. The memory came rushing back. Halloween night last year, I was working the night shift with Jake. I was standing at the register, and he was in the stockroom. That couple was the one that walked in to make a purchase that day. While I was ringing them up, a runaway truck crashed right through the glass window. Everything happened so fast. None of us survived. Now I understood why no one answered me. Understood why the man said the place was cold to the bone. Because we were dead, and my soul was trapped here, right where my life ended. I don't know how much longer I'll have to stay. I only know that, from now on, nothing will ever be the same. I've been an Uber driver for 3 years now, mostly working the night shift because the pay is better. That evening, around 11 p.m., it was raining. My phone rang with a trip request from Burnside Street. I accepted the ride and quickly drove to the pickup location. When I arrived, I saw a couple. The guy was tall and wearing a black hoodie. The girl was wearing a thin jacket with long hair down. They got in the car without saying a word. I greeted them, but the guy just nodded back. The girl kept her face down, her hair hiding her features. I drove for about 10 minutes on the highway. It was raining outside, so I drove slowly, heading east toward the city. The atmosphere in the car was weirdly heavy. I tried to focus on the road, but I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the guy staring intently at the girl. His body was tense, his hands clenched into fists on his lap. The girl was still looking down, not moving. 5 more minutes went by, and the guy started to speak. His voice sounded strained, like he was trying to hold back. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" The girl was silent. Her hand was gripping the hem of her jacket. "How long are you going to stay quiet like this?" I saw everything. The girl shook her head slightly, her hair covering half her face. I don't want to fight right now. Tell me, what did you and him do?" The girl didn't answer and turned her face away. Her silence just made her boyfriend angrier. He leaned toward her, his voice a hiss. "Answer me. What did he give you that I didn't?" The girl flinched. "Stop! You're scaring me," he roared, slamming his hand on the seat. "If you were scared, you wouldn't have done it. You cheat. You liar." The girl started crying, turning her face to the window. Her boyfriend was breathing heavily. The air in the car was thick with tension. From the guy's words, I could figure out what had happened. He had caught her with another man, maybe right before they called my car. I didn't know the details, but it was clear this was a bad situation. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what you're doing behind my back? You bitch. I gave you everything, and you have the nerve to do this?" He yelled even louder, pounding the seat repeatedly. Then suddenly the girl lifted her head, her voice sharp. "Shut up! Do you think acting like this gives you the right to hit me? Control, ordering me around, cursing, hitting. You do whatever your mood dictates. You've turned me into your puppet." The boyfriend froze for a moment. "I betrayed you? No. I ran away. I can't stand it anymore. I want to live like a human being. You always think you love me, but you really just love the feeling of controlling me." Hearing this, the boyfriend gritted his teeth, his face distorted with rage. For a few seconds, I thought things might calm down. But then, a slap so hard the whole car seemed to shake. The girl was thrown sideways, her head hitting the window. I flinched. My foot reflexively slammed the brake, and the car jerked hard. I turned back, trying to reason with him. "Hey man, calm down. Let's solve this gently." But instantly he roared, "Focus on driving, or are you her other boyfriend too?" I gripped the steering wheel, trying to stay calm after his threat. His face was beet red as he glared at me for a few seconds before turning back to the girl. I kept silent, faced forward, and drove faster. I just wanted this increasingly terrifying ride to end. Through the mirror, I saw the girl holding her face and crying. A few minutes passed in heavy silence. Then the girl spoke again. "Let's just end it." And then, without warning, he lunged. He bellowed like an animal. I turned around and was stunned to see a knife in his hand, and it was coming down on the girl. Both the girl and I screamed. Everything shattered into chaos. The sound of the knife stabbing and the overlapping screams. Blood splattered onto the seats and the windows. The metallic smell of blood filled the confined space. I gasped, my foot seemingly glued to the gas pedal. The car sped up, rocketing to nearly 80 miles per hour. I didn't hear the girl screaming, but instead weak moans. He kept going like an emotionless machine. I wanted to do something, but my body was paralyzed. And then, a loud siren from ahead snapped me out of it. I saw a police car patrolling slowly up ahead. Hope flared. I slowed down and drove straight towards it. I intentionally slammed my car into the back of the police cruiser and brought the car to a complete stop. Immediately, the maniac shifted his attention to me. He yelled, demanding that I drive away right now. His eyes were bloodshot, his mouth twisted like a demon. The blood-soaked knife in his hand was pointed directly at me. I knew I was about to die, but my survival instinct took over. I tore off my seatbelt, my fingers shaking as I pressed the button to recline the driver's seat all the way back. I yanked the door open, threw myself out, and tumbled onto the road. I screamed for help, my voice hoarse, blood smeared all over me. 2 officers from the patrol car rushed over. One pulled out his gun, and the other lunged to open the back door. The guy was still struggling, the knife still in his hand. The police officers subdued him and put him in handcuffs. I sank down onto the curb, shaking uncontrollably. The ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. They took the girl out. She was still breathing, but weakly. blood was seeping out everywhere. The girl was seriously injured and may lose some motor function. That crazy boyfriend was charged with attempted murder. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD by a doctor and had to undergo therapy. The girl survived. I, however, suffered from insomnia for months. I used to think that just working hard was enough to be safe. But in this city, no one knows what awaits them after every ride. I don't drive Uber anymore. But every time I see the light reflected on a wet road, I hear the screams in the rearview mirror. If you are driving at night, pay attention to the look in the eyes of the person sitting behind you.
Thank you for watching until the end. As mentioned earlier, our goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers in 2026 is still ongoing. If you enjoy these stories, please give us a hand and support us.